Welcome everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Michał Czuba and I am happy to present a paper titled Simulating Spreading of Multiple Coexisting Processes in Complex Networks, which I am author together with my supervisor Professor Piotr Brudka. We are from Wrocław University of Science and Technology, located in southwestern Poland in the region of Lower Silesia. This is how the agenda for the presentation looks like. I will start from introducing the problem, then the state-of-the-art review will be described. Next, I will show how did we tackle the issue from theoretical and functional point of view. Finally, a demonstration of our solution will be presented. I will close the presentation with conclusions and summary. For almost 2 years now, the resources of the entire world have been used for the fight against the invisible enemy. We spent countless hours and trillions of dollars to stop the COVID-19 pandemic, and still millions of people have died from the virus or the collapse of healthcare systems around the world. One of the challenging tasks is understanding how different countermeasures, such as information campaigns, lockdowns, or vaccinations, affect the progression of the virus. In this presentation, we would like to introduce the Network Diffusion package that allows simulating the spread of many coexisting processes in single and multi-layer network. Apart from coronavirus spread, example of such processes would be the interaction between two advertising campaigns, e.g. iPhone versus Samsung, two political campaigns, e.g. Biden versus Trump, or diseases, e.g. AIDS and tuberculosis, to name just a few. When analyzing how various phenomena in networks propagate, we have to ask following questions. What is being propagated and where is it being propagated? As an answer, we get 4 general possibilities. A single process in a single network, a single process in a multi-layer network, multiple processes in a single network, and multiple processes in a multi-layer network. The last 2 options bring the possibility of spreading multiple processes that can interact with each other. Thus, in addition to modeling each phenomenon, we also need to model the interactions between them. Here, we briefly describe the 4 possible variants of interactions. Firstly, we can distinguish supporting processes that mutually support each other by increasing coverage and velocity. The next genres are competing processes. In this case, one process causes suppression of the propagation of the other. The third case is the mixed approach. It considers situations where one process supports the second, but the second competes with the first. The last case is when processes do not interact with each other, and as shown in the table, it appears only in 7% of papers in the domain. During the work, our main goal was to find solution for the following problem. Firstly, how to determine the interactions between processes, and secondly, how to obtain a scalable routine that gives us the ability to run any number of processes in a single spreading experiment. To gain valuable recognition of available software, an appropriate tool review methodology was adopted. Our final goal was to see a general cross-section of state-of-the-art. As a result, information on more than 20 different tools was obtained. We analyzed them and divided into 2 groups: packages dedicated for network spreading simulation and software for complex network analysis. Finally, after careful reconnaissance, virtually no simulation environment was found for the simultaneous propagation of multiple processes. That led us to make decision to design it. Firstly, let us describe our theoretical approach to model the problem. We can notice a similarity between many discrete processes. It is easy to conclude that models like SIS, SIR, or SIRS can be reduced to specific cases of a model with T possible states where each of the network nodes can be in one of them at a given time step. Moreover, the transition from one state to another takes place under a certain weight, which can be called pseudo-probability. For example, a SIRS model with coefficients beta, mi, and xi can be expressed as a vector of states t equals SIR, vector of transition weights between neighboring states W equals beta mi xi, and a process matrix as shown in the slide. The way we defined the coexistence of several processes looks similar, but it's scaled into additional dimensions. Let us consider a two-process model M, representing propagation of SIR-like disease T2 and UA-like vaccinate against it T1, a classic example of competing processes. Thus, we have T1 with two states, U unvaccinated individual, V vaccinated individual, and T2 with three states, S suspected individual, I infected individual, and R recovered individual. Both processes affect each node of the network. Therefore, we can describe all possible states in the model with the following set, a Cartesian product of T1 and T2. Moreover, under the assumption that at each simulation step it is possible only to change the state of a node in the dimension of the singular process, we can list all available transitions, which is described in the picture. Please note that if we were to assign appropriate weights to particular transitions that reflect the probability of state change in one process given the others, we could obtain the effect of reinforcing or suppressing between processes. For example, let us consider two presented transition weights. Their values relation means that it is easier to get infected for unvaccinated individuals than for those who are vaccinated. In other words, the vaccination process suppresses the illness process. Using the already presented example, it is possible to define a general scheme of the multi-process model that has been used in our approach. The mutual impact between n processes can be represented by a n-dimensional orthogonal grid spanned by the points formed by the Cartesian product of sets of states of each process, in which the connections between points exist only in directions along the axes denoting processes, i.e. transitions are allowed only between points differing by a single coordinate. This approach sufficiently answers the two questions posed at the beginning of presentation. It allows us to define any number of processes with a single experiment and to determine their influence on each other in a clear way. These concepts allow us to assume that there is one process running in a given layer of the network. This means that the network should have as many layers as many processes are simulated in. As a result, with the multilayer structure, each node will be described in a context of each of defined processes. Continuing this line of reasoning, one can arrive at the general simulation algorithm. The simulation needs a propagation model, network, and initial conditions. Firstly, we iterate through each of network's layers. For each of the nodes, we compare their states with the states of their neighbors. If these states in a context of a particular process being spread in a considered layer are different, we are trying to change it following the transitions defined in a propagation model using a Bernoulli trial with probability equals the transition's weight. Having defined the computational approach for modeling processes and spreading them in the networks, we decided to implement these algorithms in a form of a prototype experimental Python package. It has been based on the networks library since it is widely used and has great community support. This significantly reduces the entry threshold for the new users. Following the theoretical concepts, we have divided code into three main components: multilayer network, propagation model, and multi-spreading. From defining the experiment to analyzing the results, user needs to perform 5 steps utilizing these components. As a result, we have published the tool in the form of a Python package, as already mentioned, which is available on PyPI, a documentation website, and repository with examples that can be easily run on a CodeOcean capsule. Finally, a practical example can be presented. We will simulate the spreading of three processes: an illness affecting the network, awareness of its existence, and vaccination against it. Illness will have three possible states: suspected, infected, and recovered, and two possible transitions: suspected to infected and infected to recovered. Awareness will have two possible states: not aware, aware, and one allowed transition: not aware to aware. Finally, vaccination will have also two states: not vaccinated and vaccinated, and one allowed transition: not vaccinated to vaccinated. We would like to model interactions between them so that vaccination and awareness reduce the probability of getting sick, and awareness of the disease should make the nodes more willing to get vaccinated. According to given constraints, we have to define 20 transitions weights, which is visualized on a slide: 8 in the axis of illness process plus 6 both in vaccination and awareness processes. In order to obtain assumed interactions between processes, we can set up weights as shown on a slide. Let us look at the transitions where awareness process is varying. By setting such values, we will obtain an effect that a suspected and unvaccinated individual is less likely to be aware than an infected and unvaccinated individual. From the other hand, suspected individual that gets vaccinated becomes aware automatically. Having defined a propagation model, we can move on to the way it should be coded using the Network Diffusion package. For that, we will use the CodeOcean capsule that contains our example, which can be reproduced very easily. First, we need to enter the CodeOcean capsule. Our example is included in the epidemic PyPI script. Let us open it. First 30 lines are necessary imports, definitions of auxiliary methods, and freezing random numbers generator seed. Lines 29 to 35, we are defining processes that will be part of propagation model. Please pay attention to the compile method with a background weight defined. This will set up all possible transition weights in a model at the given value. With that, we will save time and define manually only those transitions that are important for our scenario. In lines 37 to 47, you can see that we are setting up just a few weights exactly as assumed in the presentation. The next step is to define a network which will be a medium for phenomena spreading. For that, we will use example networks graph, which depicts relations of characters from the Victor Hugo book, multiplicated to 3 layers. The last step is to define an experiment. It connects the propagation model with the network. In lines 56 to 96, we are setting up the initial values of the particular states in the model. For the sake of reproducibility, we defined particular nodes to be seeds of the process. Instead of this tedious way, we can use function from line 56, which is able to select initial nodes randomly. And that is the default way of defining the experiment. The last two lines are responsible for running the experiment and capturing logs. After that, we can click on Reproducible Run button and wait until the experiment is done. After the simulation is done, in Result folder we can obtain reports in form of state changes of the nodes in the context of each process, a CSV files, we can see a files with parameters of experiment, model, and the network. Finally, we can see a visualization of the process states during the experiment. In the presented work, we have introduced a computational approach to simulate the spreading of multiple processes in networks. It allows to determine the interactions between compartmental processes in form of consist model and to simulate its spread in multilayer networks. Introduced algorithms have been also implemented in a prototype tool, a network diffusion package. It fills the observed gap in experimental environments for the network science. We strongly believe that our concept can be helpful and become an inspiration to other projects. Considering a prototype character of the implemented package, we plan to extend it in the next releases by new functionalities and improve its computational efficiency. Thank you for attention. In case of any questions, do not hesitate to contact us.